Hey everyone, how's it going? I think we should nominate one person every week to say hello on behalf of everybody else. What crazy news that Microsoft.
Oh god, it's still playing.
Who's this? Nathan.
What is going on?
What is going on? I'm recording this session as well, so if anyone wants to ever replay this, they can. Okay. Yeah, crazy news that Microsoft has bought ZeniMax and Bethesda. It looks like I'm definitely going to be getting an Xbox Series X. Nathan!
Yep. Nope, that's not me.
The Oblivion music.
I don't have it.
I will have to eject you from the session, Nathan. Okay, so I'm going to go through introducing the module to start off with. And then the remainder of the session is going to be introducing Unreal 4 and blueprints within Unreal 4 as well. If anybody does have any questions, please raise your hand, and instead of typing it, if you can unmute yourself and ask it, that would be better and quicker. And maybe lay off the messages as well, because I'm having a hard time keeping track of all the messages coming in. Okay, so let's start off. So just today we're just going to introduce the fundamentals of visual scripting. We're going to create some interactions using the contemporary visual scripting language in Unreal 4. And we're going to go over the courses or over the module as well. We'll kind of just look at that as we did for game design. Support from this here. So this module is mainly taught by myself. Darrell Randall will be on hand as well as a technician to help out as well if anything does happen. I've put in here, like, if you do have any issues, best thing to do is just probably message me on Discord, private message me, or if you wanted to just email me as well. Everything resource wise, again, for this module is going to come through Trello. So all recorded lectures can be accessed through there, links to resources such as video tutorials and submission of assessment through Blackboard. Okay, let's go over that just to start off with. So make sure that you're in gameplay scripting, okay, and you aren't just going, well, where the hell is everything? Okay, we're in gameplay scripting for this session. Okay, again, we've got a module handbook. Let's take a quick look at that. I'll let you read most of that. Again, this should be the first thing that you read when you come onto the module on Blackboard. So again, just going through who's going to be on the module. The aims of the module is to teach you visual scripting in Unreal 4, basically. Time management, lectures, practicals, stuff like that there. This is a breakdown of the schedule. This week, again, it's just an introduction. We're going to look at some classes, some nodes, events, and logic flow with Unreal 4. Next week is going to be going through more advanced events, variable types. Then week 3 we're going to go through spawning, player input, and blueprint communication. Week 4 is game framework classes and debugging tools. Week 5 is functions, macros, blueprint interfaces. Week 6 is flow control nodes, line tracing, and collisions. Week 7 is UI UX. Week 8 is controllers, behavior trees, and simple AI. Week 9 is construction scripts. Week 10 is game field, saving and loading. Week 11 is packaging and handed in. And then week 12 is kind of like troubleshooting playtesting session, so we'll do that on the Tuesdays. And then week 13, and this is going to be after Christmas, is when you hand in your working prototype. Yeah, we will be doing attendance in a second, don't worry, Morgan. So there's only one assessment in this module, and it's 100% of the assessment, and it's a first-person game project. So basically, I'm going to give you a game project. It's the bare bones of a first-person shooter. I say bare bones. It basically has you holding a gun. You can walk around and look, and that is it. What we're going to do is, over the series of 12 weeks, we're going to take that from the bare bones and we're going to make a first-person shooter, okay, within Unreal 4. The outputs will consist of like all your project files, included all scripted elements for the project, student comments on developed scripts, a packaged version of your project, so we're going to be able to share games, okay? I'm thinking about people setting up an itch.io or itch.io account, so we can share these games with everybody. And the assessment criteria is going to be scripting, gameplay, and presentation. Who says they need to be manually marked in? Sophie, yeah. Drop me a message after this session and I'll do it for you. And that goes for anybody else. So the marking components, obviously this is a scripting module, so scripting features heavily on it, so it's 50%. Gameplay 25%. So although I'm going to take you through how to kind of make a first-person shooter, we're going to have some AI in there. I do want you to kind of add in your own functions that I have not shown you how to do in the session. So it's just not like just a follow Brian. You are going to be taking this a bit further and kind of adding in some more gameplay features, okay, that you want to add in. And then presentation. So these are things like particle effects, music, sound effects, making sure that it's packaged. So the presentation of the game along with the UI are all going to be marked in Element 3 presentation for 25%. So again, marking criteria is all in here, so you can learn how to get your distinctions, merits, pass, fails, and uber fail if you wanted to go that far. And then there's some assessment guidance in terms of handing it in and how to correctly name your projects. But again, please look at that there after the session on your free time. So quickly attendance, I'll set this up now. So 7902, I haven't put an end time to this, okay? So you should be fine for the whole session and then I'll end it afterwards. So 7902. Unreal does use blueprints. It's kind of like Scratch, only far more advanced, I would say. I've used Scratch before. I don't think we should compare it to that, to be honest. Learning materials. So again, if you go into Learn Materials in Blackboard, it's going to take you to your Trello resources. Trello resources, not as much as game design because it's mainly going to be tutorials that I'm going to be giving out. So you'll find your module guide on there. You'll find your visual script and tasks, which I'm going to go into in a second. We've got the game scripting project, okay? So this is the project that you're going to have to download to follow along in terms of the tutorials that I'm going to give and, you know, that first person project. I've also got a link to the student groups in there as well for Tuesday sessions. So make sure that you are downloading this project. I'm going to show you as well where to download Unreal 4 for your at-home use and how to set that up in a second. But yeah, make sure that you download this here and unzip it onto your desktop or whatever. We also have a few Unreal 4 scripting videos and help up already. Okay, so I've already got a series up on YouTube. It's just called Introduction to Blueprint. It's pretty old at this stage, but it does cover a lot of the things that I'm going to cover in these sessions, okay? I'll probably be going into more detail though in the lectures. Unreal also has an official learning hub, which you should access, has really good tutorials on there. Make games with Kate. Kate works at Riot Games, so she has started making a Unreal 4 tutorial series, and I think it's got maybe 8 videos in it so far, but they're pretty good, so I thought I would put them up. Matthew Wadstein, he has a series called What the Fuck Unreal 4. So basically, I'm going to be showing you some nodes in Unreal today. If there's a node that you don't understand, Matthew Wadstein's WTF video series goes through every node in Unreal 4 and breaks it down in exactly what they do. Yeah, nobody else is allowed to say those no words. Only Brian Coyle is. And then below that there we also have Unreal 4 forums. I don't want you just going through my tutorials and thinking that's all there is about Unreal 4. Or I don't want you thinking that if you ever get stuck that you should automatically come to me for help. But you have to be more reliant on the information that's already out there. If you get stuck at something, the first protocol should be Googling that issue that you're having. If not, afterwards you should be putting some post up in the forums and asking for help on there. And the reason I'm doing this is not because I'm super lazy and I don't want to answer your questions, but you are not going to have me around forever, okay? After the course, you are going to have issues with whatever game engine that you're using. And I want you to have the skills to be able to tackle those problems, be able to search online, to be able to ask for help from people and professionals, and make sure that you aren't reliant on one person to kind of get you through some technical software. And it's a really good skill to have, okay? It's one of the things that they would ask you as a designer or even a programmer. If you had this problem with a certain implementation technique within Unity Unreal, how would you solve it? And usually the correct answer is, well, first of all, I would Google it and see if there's somebody else that has had that problem and how they've overcome it. I love the way we're all saying no words now. And then each week I will be putting up the slides that I'll be carrying out for each session, and a recording of that session as well. Today's game design one was like 2 hours or something, so it took a while to kind of be processed on YouTube. So hopefully this one won't be as long and I'll get it up ASAP. So yeah, so those are resources, those are your assessments. Again, on Blackboard, if you go to the assessment tab here, you'll see that we have the assessment hand-in for your first person project. And it just has the same details there as it does for in the module guide. What was the other thing I was going to show? Oh, the hand-in date for this is the 8th of January, okay? So I believe you finished Christmas on like the 4th of January. So you have like 4 days after that there to hand in, and I make sure all my hand-ins are like 11 o'clock that night, okay? So it's like 1 minute to 12. So that's when you have to hand in. Yeah, like if anybody's ever done any coding before, really don't worry about blueprints. It's super simple compared to like C# or C++. The main thing is that you understand logic and things like that. If you understand that, the blueprint system becomes pretty easy, to be honest. The great thing about blueprints is it's really good for kind of bugs and things like that there, and being able to identify problems because it's all visual based. It's just really easy to see what's wrong and what's right with your code. Right, delivery. So gameplay scripting, 20 credit module like game design. So that means it's got 200 hours of learning attached to it over the 12 weeks. That breaks down into 1 hour of lectures, 2 hours of studios, and then it's like 14 hours of self-directed time. So the lectures entire cohort is to attend. So that's where we introduce topics, I demonstrate scripting practices live, and then lectures will be recorded and put up online, as I was saying. Studio, so you've got 1 session per week, last 2 hours. Groups only, so please come to your group, okay? And only your group, don't come to another time because there might not be room and I don't want to be turning people away. We get the recap on the lecture topics, okay? So part of it will be recapping on the lecture topics, and then all other aspects will be kind of troubleshooting any issues that you're having, playtesting your prototypes, and gaining like some feedback on the work that you've been doing over the last week. So it's a really good chance to kind of catch up on what you're doing, kind of troubleshoot any issues you're having, and kind of work through some of the content that's been shown over the last week. Self-directed study, so that's 14 hours per week. So it's kind of research on visual scripting topics and work on assessment or weekly tasks. I say weekly tasks. There's about 7 or 8 tasks. I'd like you to kind of research and delve into these tasks and have them finished within 3 or 4 weeks, to be honest. That's where I would love to get used to, okay? So you're kind of following along then in my lectures, kind of really understanding what I'm doing and being able to ask questions and kind of probe me to go deeper into the topics that we're talking about. So you'll find these tasks if you go into the Trello. So visual scripting tasks, click on the link, and they're pretty simple to start off with, okay? They do get harder. You don't get graded on how well you do in these tasks, but what I would say is if you finished all these tasks, you would at least get a pass on this module, okay? So it's a good idea to kind of finish these in 3 and 4 weeks, and then you can go, I've definitely passed the module now. I can really focus on, you know, adding other elements to the game. So for instance, task 1 is, you know, setting up a light, and you know, maybe it turns on when you press play. And then I've kind of got extra challenges in there, like find a way to turn the light on by using a light switch or adding a dim effect to the light as well. And then it kind of goes on like creating a door, and like the harder task in the door is creating an elevator, creating guns and weaponry, maybe like different shot types like single shot, burst, fully automatic, pickups for health and ammo, debugging. So I will throw at you at some stage some scripts that are broken and I'll look for you to debug them and find out what the issues and correct them. Ray casting, so this is a technique if you want to use that to shoot guns, but you can also use it to like open doors and use this thing called blueprint interfaces. Pathfinding is for AI, so it's just creating some AI. And then the last task is creating some UI, okay, for this game that you're creating. It is not draw a circle, draw the rest of the owl. Believe me, we'll not get to that stage. So does anybody have any questions on that so far? Carol, go ahead. Are these tasks weekly based? You can do them weekly based, but to be honest, if you're working like 14 hours a week in Unreal, you should have these done in 3 or 4 weeks, to be honest, especially if you're starting out. A lot of the topics that we cover on our weekly sessions as well will kind of go through these. So for instance, today, like we're going to be doing basically the light task or the start of it. So you'll have a really good understanding of these aspects as you kind of work across. Yeah, so Unreal 4, we are using 4.23, okay? Make sure that you use that there, no others. The reason is I think we've got 4.23 only in the labs or the computer room at university. There is 4.24 and 4.25. I'll look to see if we can upgrade to those later on in the year. But for now, just make sure you're working 4.23. It can be downloaded for free. So if you search for Unreal 4 download, first hit will be the Unreal Engine, and up in the top right here is where you download it. You will have to set up an Epic Games account. For those that play Fortnite, you will already have them. And it's free, okay? So the first thing that you download isn't actually the thing that you actually download isn't actually the Unreal Engine. What you actually download to begin with is the Epic Games Launcher, okay? And it looks like this. basically you're going to have a few tabs over here. You can buy games here if you wanted to as well. It's a fully fledged store now, just like Steam. A lot of people hate it. Adam, no, don't download 4.25 because you won't be able to use it at uni. So 4.23, please. And the good thing about this as well is if you want to buy games on here, you can, but you get 2 free games a week as well. Like for instance, I have Grand Theft Auto 5. All these games I've gotten for free, okay, since I've signed up to the Epic Games Store. A lot of people hate it, but I'm like, 2 free games a week? I'm going to get that. And there's loads more I didn't even bother downloading because I've got them on other consoles and such like that there. So when you do download the Epic Games Store or the Epic Games Launcher, make sure you go to the Unreal Engine section. When you initially open this here, it will probably have something for you to download 4.25, okay? What you want to make sure that you do is hit this plus icon and then choose 4.24. Obviously I can't because or 4.23 because I've already got it downloaded. But make sure that you choose the right engine to install and then hit install, okay? I'm just looking at the comments here. So Turla, does that help there? If you get that engine version, you can select whatever version that you want. So it goes the whole way right to the beginning that you can download. I don't recommend going to the very first one. There's a lot of features missing in that one. Owen, what doesn't show up for you? You need to be a bit more specific. I don't know if you're talking about Watch Dogs 2 or 4.23. If 4.23 doesn't show up, it means it's already installed, but if you hit the plus icon, you should be able to get 4.23 somewhere here. Yes, Nathan? The link to the Trello board is on Blackboard, but I've also put it on the Discord channel under the gameplay scripting channel. So if you go to your Blackboard for gameplay scripting and go into learning materials, there's the link there. If it's only 4.25 or 4.24, I would download one of those and then I'm guessing you should be able to install one of these. If you're going to download either, it would be 4.24, but they should all be there. So maybe try and download 2.4 and then once that's downloaded and installed, click add another version and install 4.23. You got it sorted. Okay. So once you download the project, and the project again is on the Trello board, you're going to get this folder here, okay? So in this folder, we have our project file and we have all the associated folders to do with that project. All of this together makes up your project in entirety, okay? This is not your project, or one of these folders is not your project. All of these together are, okay? What I usually find is sometimes first year students, when they come in, they hand in their work, will hand in this file here, okay, your gameplay scripting.u project. It is a 1 kilobyte file. It basically has this information in it. It has what engine you're using, and that's basically it, okay? So make sure you just do not hand in this file at the end of the year, or if you're sharing a project, you do not just share this file. you make sure that you share everything associated with it, okay? And you hand that in at the end of the year. So whenever you download this here and you've got the engine installed, all you have to do is double click that and the project will load up. Okay, it will look something like that. I'm not going to go through the project yet. I'm just kind of showing you where to download this and how to open it up. So, yeah, Unreal 4 can be downloaded. Yeah, look, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wondering, do you see throughout our projects, are we allowed to use some of like the free assets and stuff that are on the store?
Yeah, by all means. I should have said that. Good point, Luke. Really good point. So another good thing about Unreal and Epic Games is if you go to the Unreal section and then to Marketplace, hopefully it loads. Oh, well, it mightn't be loading for me, but oh, there we go. So in here, basically, Unreal will be giving away free assets every month. So if you go for free, you can see there's Epic Games content. So this is content Epic Games have created themselves. You can use Megascans. We'll not be covering that in this module, but you can find out loads of tutorials on how to do that. There's assets then that are free for a month, and then they've got this free collection that's permanently free that you can use. Okay, so if there's any 3D assets or anything like that that you want to use, by all means go in here. If it's to do with scripting, okay, and you're like, oh, this helps me, you know, or this does this scripting thing for me, make sure that you comment that you did not do the scripting for that before you hand it in, because that would be plagiarism. All right, so just be aware of that. Yeah, like, you know what, like the games industry, because it has to be so quick in its turnaround of developing games, a lot of indie developers will use like free assets or pay for assets. So there's no shame in doing it. Take it and use it to the best you can. Joe, go ahead. You can get Maya for free. So yeah, you could look up Maya if you wanted to, or Blender. People are like making a massive switch over to Blender. So if you're starting out, maybe Blender would be the best one. Another thing I want to just say that Unreal 4 works far better if you've got multiple monitors. So remember I was saying that if you have the means, get a laptop. If you can, get a cheap monitor along with that and connect it up. It makes life a lot easier for yourselves, okay? And it's something that you'll see tomorrow when we're in class. You'll see using two screens is far superior than using one, and it's far quicker. Or ultra wide, it's up to you. Saving your work, okay, so what I would say is make sure that you're using cloud storage to back up your work. But never work from cloud storage, okay? Because Unreal 4 needs really good, or needs really quick access to some of the assets in your project folders. If it doesn't get that, it'll crash. So I wouldn't even work from a pen drive or an external hard drive. I would make sure that it's on my desktop, and then every like day or something like that there, I zip it up and I put it on the cloud for, you know, backup. Again, losing work is not an excuse. Make sure you're using incremental saves, because sometimes a project will corrupt itself and sometimes there's just no way of getting work back. Oren, if you want to go ahead. No, save everything to the desktop. So remember that folder structure I was just showing you? Keep that on your desktop on your computer. And then whenever you need to save anything, you know, it'll automatically save there anyways. But at the end of the day, I would make a zip folder of that and put it on the cloud, just so that you have backups of your work. And if it does corrupt itself, or if you do lose it, you're not losing a week's worth, you're not losing a month's worth, you might be just losing a day's worth, okay? Module guide, we've already gone through that, that's fine. Okay, so today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through blueprints. So we're going to explain the blueprint editor and the interface. We're going to demonstrate how to create blueprint classes. We're going to introduce the concept of a parent-child inheritance class system inside Unreal 4. We're going to show how to place nodes in the graph, explain the blueprint graph execution, and so hopefully by the end of this lecture you'll be able to create blueprint classes in the editor, differentiate between level blueprints and blueprint classes, place nodes in the event graph, and understand the basic concept of parent-child inheritance, and then understand the execution flow of a blueprint. So that's what we're going to do today. Pretty simple. The more you use Unreal 4, the better you're going to get at it, okay? So if you have a computer at home, download it and use it. If you're able to come into the sessions, the sessions on the Wednesday and Thursday and book yourself in, please do. Pretty simple. So I kind of go through this to start off with. I've got a few notes. So I think when people think of scripting, the first thing that comes to their head is generally like text-based scripting. So if anybody's ever used on Unity or like any other game engine really, it's all text-based, so you're typing in the language itself. And most game development still revolves around these languages and systems to a degree. They are really fast to compute, they're agile, and they scale very well, which is necessary for game development in large projects. But at the same time, they're not very accessible. For designers, artists, and animators, like we're kind of put off by this text-based code, which means that for simple things in game development, we often rely on programmers to do like really like mundane tasks that should be handled by designers or artists or animators. But it's just that we don't understand, and there's this kind of barrier between us. So blueprints, on the other hand, it's a node-based system, okay, that allows you to string along multiple nodes to basically code but in a visual way. Blueprints, it's a great system that allows people with no coding experience in game development to expand and interact with the game's underlying code, expand in functionality or tweaking parameters without programmers who can focus on the more heavy-duty aspects of game development. So, you know, we're not coming onto this course to be great programmers, but we can use a language to develop prototypes. So it's a great way to become familiar with programming features and develop an understanding of computer logic. And as designers, it's also a great way to develop prototypes, as it's very accessible but also very functional. I hate coding, but blueprints I can understand. I've never used databases that much, but it might be okay. So I've started out using Unreal Engine around 2007. It wasn't actually called the Unreal Engine back then. Well, it kind of was. It was called UDK or Unreal 3. We didn't have a blueprint system, but something that blueprints grew from, it was like called Kismet. But the thing about Kismet, it was level based, and it was still a visual tool, but it was level based. And I'll kind of go into kind of like the limitations of that in a second. So mainly used for scripting level functionality. So like, you know, how a door opens, or like, oh, if you walk into this area, it might spawn enemies, or there could be an explosion somewhere. It wasn't class-based, meaning what you scripted in that level stayed in that level, and you'd have to copy and paste what you've done into another level, but it was like very time-consuming to do that, and it was really stretching the limitations of what Kismet was designed for. So Epic realized that for Unreal 4, they wanted to expand on that functionality, and it became called Blueprints. Blueprints are not bound to a certain level anymore, well, if you're working in classes. What you script in the editor can be placed in any level you wish, making it a far more powerful tool. Blueprints also works off a class-based system and allow you to use inherit features and other classes, and allows us to use and create multiple variations of a single blueprint, such as a door that might be locked or unlocked, making it much more efficient to use as well. So we will cover in classes kind of in future sessions and in today's. There is a level blueprint for each level, which kind of works like Kismet / blueprint. But again, whatever you script in the level one, you can't really carry across to any other level. It's something that we'll show today. So what do we have here? Like, is Blueprint superior to C++, for instance? Not really. Both systems are very closely connected to each other. In actual fact, Blueprint works off C++, so underlying everything that you work with in Blueprints is basically C++. It's just kind of hidden away in these visual nodes. So they're kind of two systems that work together. And in actual fact, Epic Games recommends that you use C++ and Blueprints together when you're developing a bigger scale project or game. For now, as designers, like creating small prototypes, we can stick with Blueprints and maybe carry some of that functionality across to C++ later on. But in future classes, we might have an opportunity of looking at some C++ and looking at how creating functions in there relate to using them within Blueprints. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at Unreal 4 now. I'll kind of introduce you to the software, the main layout, and we'll start creating some simple scripts in there as well. And then hopefully if you have this at home, you can kind of work on that at home. And if you have a question during any of this as well, by all means just raise your hand, and if I'm going too fast or anything, you can stop me and tell me to slow down. And I'll go through the project with you as well. So this is the project that we're going to be using. It's just called gameplay scripting, so nothing fancy there. I'll kind of go over the layout first, and if anybody's ever used Unity before, there's certain things that are exactly the same in Unreal as they are in Unity. So the transition shouldn't be that hard. On the top right hand corner, we've got what's called the word outliner. Okay, so in here, basically it lists all the objects that you have contained in your level. So for instance, if I have these stairs and I click on it, you can see that it takes me over to that label here in the word outliner. And it also shows that I've got 87 actors, okay, in this level. So actors are kind of like objects within Unreal 4. So that's just like a simple hierarchy showing you exactly what is in your level and how it's grouped together. Below that, I'll get rid of these word settings, is your details tab. So this here basically shows you all the attributes and details for whatever object you've got selected. So for instance, if I click on this wall, it will show me the location, the rotation, and the scale of that wall. And then because I've set up a few things in here to do with blocking out levels and such, it's got like things that, you know, you'll be able to change the color of these objects, and you know how much they are made of, metallic, roughness, but it's just got generalized information about each object. Whenever we're creating a blueprint, we click on a blueprint. If we've got anything exposed like variables or functions, they'll also all be contained in here as well. Then in the bottom part, this is our content browser. So any assets that we create in terms of 3D assets, particle effects, sounds, blueprints, these are all going to be contained within the content browser. So for this project, we already have a fair few assets at our reach. Okay, so for instance, it's just frozen for a second. So we've got some like damage sounds in here, no ammo sounds. In the blockout, I'll go over this maybe in a later session, but there's certain shapes and stuff that there we can move into our level to kind of block out a level. In the blueprints, this is where I want you to create all your blueprints moving forward. You can create subfolders in here if you wish. But for now, I just want you to use this here area to create blueprints. We've got a blueprint in here called variable types and character. I'll go over that in a minute. Then we've got a few other folders, maps. So we've got a map called your level. So this is the level I want you to use to create your final prototype. You can also obviously change this to whatever way you want, but this is the level I want you to create. There's also a shooting range level. This is kind of more of a byproduct of a previous project I used to do. But in here you can also use whatever blueprints you want. Again, it's just a shooting range that you can use if you wanted to. I'll go back to your level. In here, materials. So materials are things that you can drop on to give certain assets a certain look. Fjölen, if you want to go ahead. RTX is not on because I have an 880 in this laptop of mine. Fjölen, oh. We also have like a few meshes, so we've got like targets and stuff in here, and a few particles. They kind of do with the guns that we have. So we've got a fair few guns in this project as well. So we've got like automatic rifles, semi-automatic knives, and hand pistols and stuff like that. And these particles kind of work in conjunction with them. Nobody is making Skyrim at all. Nobody. It's too big. Okay, so does anybody have any questions on the interface? Oh, I forgot. Up in the left hand corner here is your mode section. So this is where you can add in basics such as like cubes, spheres, player starts. We'll kind of be using this to add in lights maybe, and cinematic effects and volume classes to do with lighting. But to be honest, you'd not be using this area too much. Also our landscape and foliage tools are in here as well. But again, we won't be using that too much. And then at the top, you've got a save button. This just saves your current level. If you make any adjustments to your assets down here, this save button does not save those, okay? You're best off using this here button called Save All. So just make sure you're using that one. And then you can go to the marketplace here. There's a few settings in here which we'll be going through later sessions. Your level blueprint is in here. So open level blueprint is under blueprints. We'll be covering that in a second. Cinematics will not be touching those until a later date. Build will not be touching that, but you can also play the game straight away if you wanted to. Just by click and play. I need to build my lighting again. So we've got our game running. You can see we've got a gun and we can kind of look around. But that's basically it. We have no other functionality, so we're going to have to add that in. To get out of play and go back into edit mode, you just hit escape. Okay. And that's kind of rundown of Unreal 4's main interface. If anybody has any questions, by all means, just ask away. We won't be going over textures or anything like that in this module. Next semester you're going to have Sabrina for asset development for games. She'll be covering 3D modeling, asset creation, and maybe some particle generation as well. Yeah, all assets in here were created by myself, except the weapons and this mannequin dude. The attendance code is, give me a second here, 7902. 7902. You were close, Car. Very close. Look, to be honest, as long as you get through my lessons and you kind of have that functionality in, you can kind of go in whatever direction you want with it, okay? You can be really creative with it. It's totally up to you. Adam, the session that we're going to go through now, I'm recording this and it'll be up in Trello later on. And I've also got a YouTube series already up there called Introduction to Blueprints, and that kind of goes through the same thing here as well. So I'm going to go through making our first blueprint, okay? And basically all it's going to be is a light that is off, and then when you start the level, when you press play, the light's going to turn on, okay? And it's just going to show us that functionality working. Carl, if you've got a question, go ahead. Not really, because if you follow the elements within the module handbook, there are grades there for gameplay. So if you look at that there, your aim here is to create a functioning shooter with a horde mode, but there are additional gameplay features that should be considered to give the player a more satisfying experience and add replay to the prototype. Features associated include but not limited to weapon variety, enemy variety, gameplay balance, Easter eggs, leaderboards. But those are suggestions, okay? You can kind of go further than that if you wanted to. Okay, so I'll kind of start off by going over how to create a blueprint within Unreal 4. It's really, really simple. I'm going to do this in the blueprints folder. So in this area here, if you right click, it's going to create a pop-up menu, okay, that allows you to create many, many types of different assets. The one that we're going to focus on for now is this blueprint class. So in here is we're going to be able to create a blueprint class. Now the class that we make is going to be inherited from another class. Typically, the main class that we want to use is the actor class, and it kind of gives you a brief description of that actor class. So an actor class is an object that can be placed or spawned in the world. So whenever we make our blueprint class now, it's actually going to be a child of this actor class. So whatever has been made in this actor class, maybe there's some functions in there to do with placing objects, we're going to inherit that, and it's going to be in our blueprint class called Light BP. And if you hover over that, it actually gives you some of the underlying code that kind of makes up and the components that are going to be in that. There's other classes here as well. These are the kind of common classes that we use. So we've got a pawn class. A pawn is an actor that can be possessed and receive input from a controller. And then a character class is a type of pawn that includes the ability to walk around, okay? So that's pretty significant. We've got this pawn class. You can't really walk around in it. But then we've got this character class, which is a child of the pawn class, but it's got additional functionality in it that allows you to walk around. So if we were going to create a player, we would probably go for that one. If we were going to create something else that allows us to have input into it, we would probably create a pawn. And then there's other classes such as player controller, game mode, actor component, and scene component. I'm not going to go over those now, but those are the kind of common classes. And then if you click on this all class, you can see that there's, you know, literally hundreds more that you can choose from, okay? Again, we don't need to go over those. The circle of life, yeah. So let's click on the actor class and let's create a class of our own based off this here one. So I'm just going to call this here one light underscore BP. That's another thing about Unreal 4 is that you can never have a space in the name. So if I try and put a space in, it says name may not contain the following characters. And it doesn't say anything, but there's a space there. So I always put an underscore in wherever I want to have a space. So if you're ever naming an asset or anything like that, and you're taking it from Maya into Unreal 4, make sure that it never has a space. I can't remember the exact reason, but I think it's the underlying way the system works or whatever code they're using. You can't have a space in it, okay? So I've got my light BP. if I double click on that, it's going to bring up the blueprint editor, okay, which looks quite different from the main editor. Some things are the same, but a lot of it is very different. So I'm kind of going through this layout to begin with. On the right hand side is we have the details. Again, this works off whatever we've got selected. At the minute, we don't have anything really in our scene or our components, but we've got our class default selected, so that's what it's bringing the details up for. If I went to class settings, again, it would bring up the details for that. Over here on the left hand side is our components panel. So in here we can add components to our level blueprint by clicking the plus add component. Oh, and there's quite a range of components that we can add in here. In actual fact, we can actually create our own components later on and add them in ourselves. So you can see here you can add in cube spheres, a skeletal mesh, you can add in a static mesh, which is just basically a 3D object. And then on down here you can see that you can add in, where's my lights? Oh, lights, there we go. So we've got different sets of lights that we can add in as well. So we've got a directional light, point light, rectangular light, skylight, spotlight. I will probably go for a point light at this point. So add components, point light. If you're sick of scrolling after a while, we have a search bar up here, and I can just type in point and I'll get my point light. Amy, go ahead. Oh. No, the door would actually be an actor, because you're not possessing the door whenever you're interacting with it. So yeah, it would be an actor. Yeah. Again, you wouldn't possess a gun. You'd usually attach a gun to the player that you're already possessed in. So upon, you know, like you could have an AI controller that possesses a pawn and takes control of that and things like that. But don't worry, we'll kind of go, a player is a pawn, okay? So a player is a pawn class that then has a child class called character, and then you've got your player. So it's kind of like 2 steps below it. So I'm going to put this light component into my viewport so you can see it there. If I click on that, you can see my details tab. I get all the details and attributes associated with that light, and I can change them in here. On the left, or the bottom left hand, I should say, is my blueprint section. So in here is where we get to create new functions and variables and macros as well, but we'll cover those in another session. So variables and functions are really important to having something scripted inside the game. So we've got a light, we've got our viewport where we can kind of see all these components. It's kind of like a prefab within Unity, but we kind of have this self-contained editor that allows us to add components but also script inside it as well. So there's 2 areas where you can script. My computer would not mess up. So we've got the construction script area, okay. This is where we add in scripts that are going to happen before you press play. Don't worry about what that means just yet, but basically it allows us to add in scripts that we can use to develop levels with before the player gets to play them, okay. So this is an area where we can get to do that. The event graph, this is where we do the main bulk of our scripting, okay, for whatever blueprint that we work on. So you can see already that we have these 3 event nodes, and you can tell that they're event nodes because they have like a red top to them, okay. And I'll kind of go through what these event nodes do in a second, but basically if you want to create a new node in here, all you have to do is right click, and it opens up a menu that shows you a database where all these nodes are connected. Now the great thing about this menu is that it's context sensitive. meaning that it knows what type of variable or what type of component that you have selected when you're creating this menu, and it will filter all the type of nodes that are associated with that object or with that component or with that variable to kind of narrow down your selection a bit. So it really understands what you're trying to use, and it will kind of let you know what is usable with that content and what's not. These events that are already created in here, these are kind of like the starting points for any script that you create. You kind of need an event to kick everything off. So for instance, we've got this event begin play. This event fires off any scripting that happens after it as soon as you press play. Okay, so as soon as you press play, this node will kind of execute. Okay. Then below that is an actor begin overlap. This here will fire off if any other actor overlaps or comes into contact with this blueprint. So this is going to execute, okay, when that happens. The event tick fires off every frame. So every frame this is going to execute, okay, in the program. It's a bit costly, but sometimes you do need to use an event tick. And the one thing I would say is if you've got like a terrible computer, the event tick might only work 30 frames per second. But if you've got like an awesome PC at home, like a really good gaming rig, this here might work like 120 times per second. So it's not consistent. And we're going to talk about that in a few sessions where we're using the event tick to maybe drive some movement. But if you switch your project between computers and those computers are a higher or lower standard, you'll find that the movement is quicker or slower depending on what computer you're using, because this tick is not consistent with its frame rate because of the system that you're using. It means that some things might work like differently, like elevators or doors or things like that. Dylan, go ahead. You might be right, Fiona, and I'll have to check on that, but I'm pretty sure it's frames. So you might use an event tick if you need to keep track of some information every frame. So if something needs to be updated every frame in the game, that's usually when you'd use the event tick. So like when we get the UI and maybe you have to keep track of something every frame, you'd use the event tick there. Or if you need to drive maybe an animation, a simple one, you can use an event tick there as well. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll kind of use our event begin play to drive some functionality in this blueprint. So if I grab my point light, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the intensity of that point light, and I'm going to set it down to 0. Okay, so if I bring this into our game now, and I'm just going to drag and drop it in, you can see because the light's set to 0 that it's not illuminating everything or anything. If I change the intensity up, you can see, look, it's starting to light, but I'm just going to keep it at 0 for now. What we can do is we can grab an instance or a pointer to this component and drag it into our event graph. So if I drag this in, you can see now I've got like a pointer to my component up here, and I can have like as many of these as I want. But what I can do is, see this pin at the end? I can drag this off and let go, and it's going to place a new node. It's going to bring up this menu and going to go, well, what new node do you want to do? And I change my intensity there. So what I want to do is I want to change my intensity back up to the default level, which is 5000. So what I want to search for is probably intensity. So I'll give that a go. I'll type in intensity. And I've got a node here called set intensity. So that's the one I want to use. So my new intensity is going to be 5,000. Now the problem with this is we've got these two nodes, event begin play and set intensity, but they're not connected. So this will execute, but it's got nothing to execute yet. So what we want to do is we want to get these white execute nodes and drag them together. And that's how we string logic together in its most basic form in Unreal 4. We connect events to nodes and nodes to other nodes, and we can kind of string these together. So for instance, if I've got this point light and I type in color, and it's the American naming of color, we can set the light color, so we can get the light color if we want, but we can set it, set the black the minute. I can set it to kind of like a red. Let's go red. And then I can connect those two nodes together. The flow of execution is always left to right, okay? One of the worst things that you could do if you're ever creating some logic is do something like this, you know, where it's all like wired really differently or something like that. It just looks awful. Please don't do that. So just be aware that it executes and it flows left to right. Yeah, we need a British version. So yeah, we'll get to key presses in a second, one step at a time. So now let's go back to our game. Okay, we've got our light in, and if we go to the details panel, we can select our light component in there to see the details, and we can see that the intensity is 0 and the light color is white. Okay, if we press play, you can see now that it changes to red and it's at 5,000. So that was pretty quick. It was really hard to tell exactly what happened there because I pressed play and it was just red. So what we could do is we can go to our event begin play, and I'll drag out another node, let go, and I'll type in delay. So I want to add in a delay to this, okay? So under flow control, we'll go to delay. And we want it to delay the execution of this node, say by 1 second. And then we'll compile that and save it. Anytime you ever make any changes, it's always a really good idea to compile it and save it. It speeds up the whole process. And then let's press play. So it's still dark, and then after a second, it turns on. So somebody's asking for a flickering light. I tell you what, I'll show you the flickering light maybe this session. What time is it? It's 7:10. We'll have to do a timeline. I don't want to go into timelines just yet. I'll do that next week. I promise I'll do something like that next week. In actual fact, you could research it and do it yourselves at home. I just kind of want to keep on track for what we're doing this time. Sorry, it's 5:10, not 7:10. So what else were we going to cover today? Level blueprints and blueprint classes. Okay, so you can see here that we've made our light BP. So we can drag this into our level as many times as we want. And what it's actually doing is it's creating an instance of that class in our level. And that's really important because later on when we come to blueprint communication, we're going to have to communicate with specific instances of classes in our level. So we have to make that differentiation that we're not actually sometimes communicating with a class, we're communicating with an instance of a class in the level. And what that means is I've got this instance and it's going to carry all the characteristics of this class in with it, but it also means that we can change things in here as well. So for instance, if I had 2 point lights, that were a blueprint class or a light here, I can go to this light and I can change its intensity and I can change its color. And even though that these two are from the same class, their instances in the level are different, okay? Now, we can also, I'm just going to save everything. Can we edit an existing blueprint without having to save out a new one unless we plan to use it? If I change this light BP, the default values in these instances will also change, okay? So if you wanted to make a light that had completely different functionality from another one, I would suggest that you make a new light BP. If you had, you know, a light BP that when the player walked close to it, it would turn on, but you also wanted to have additional functionality into that, I would make the light class that turns on, and then what you can do is, and I'll show this in later sessions, I would right click that and you can create a child blueprint class of that one. So it would carry across all that functionality of the light turning on when you're close to it, but then you can build into that if you wanted to. We're making a horror FPS. I thought everybody got the memo. Doom 3, baby. Why not both? Yep. So let's open up another level. And I kind of show you the difference between a level blueprint and a class blueprint. So we've got this different level, okay? And if I go to my blueprints folder, I can drag in the same light as I was using in that previous level, okay? It's got all the same default values as before. Obviously I can change them in here if I wanted to, but as a class blueprint, I can use these in different levels. And you can see that also, I forgot to show you, this here blueprint obviously is from an actor class, and it actually tells you your parent class up here, which is an actor. If, though, I went to my level blueprint, open level blueprint, which is slightly different from a class blueprint, because you have no component section here, because the components that you use in a level blueprint are all contained in your level. So for instance, I've got, let's see, this light here, okay? If I have that selected in my level blueprint, I can right click and I can get a reference to that. See that? And again, I can pull out from that there and type in intensity. And then I can set the intensity of that. My computer is about to have a meltdown. So I set the intensity to 0. And I'm going to have to right click and type in event begin play because there isn't one in here. So I've got this node now, event begin play, and put that into my intensity and save it, compile and save it. If I press play, that light would have went out, okay? It's probably just not shown as well there, but it has gone out. Now the problem is with this level blueprint, whatever I've scripted in here, I cannot carry across to another level. So if I open up my maps, go into my your level, and go into blueprints, level blueprint, you can see it's completely defaulted here. It doesn't carry across any of that logic. So level blueprints are okay for doing one-off tasks, okay, inside a level. But I really wouldn't recommend using them, to be honest. You know, if you're going to have doors that open in your level, you're best off using a class and then basically pulling instances of that class into your level where fit, okay, and where it's needed. Another thing about this here is this light, you know, that we've created. Let me go to my blueprints. I've got functionality in here. If I wanted to have a child blueprint and kind of have a different light, you know, maybe that's a bad example, But say if you were developing a car class, you probably wouldn't develop a car class. You'd probably develop a vehicle class that would have some common functionality that would be in all types of vehicles. So, you know, acceleration, braking, steering, that type of thing. And then you could develop child classes off that vehicle class, such as a tank or a bus or a car. And they would all have that functionality pulled across to it, such as steering, acceleration, braking. But then you could add in the specifics of that class, such as a tank has a turret, so it would have a different model. It would have different functionality, as in it would be able to shoot. And the car and the bus would be completely different in terms of how many passengers it would be able to fit inside it. So having a class blueprint is very powerful because it means that you're cutting down the amount of work that you're having to do, and it makes the whole system a lot more efficient as well. And it means that your game's going to run a lot better. It also means during the it's exactly like prefabs in Unity, exactly the same. And it also means that, you know, you're going to cut down the complexity of your project. So instead of having, you know, 50 different types of classes, you're going to have one parent class, and then you're going to have, you know, maybe 30 child classes underneath that pull a lot of the functionality from that parent. So just bear that in mind. And we'll cover child classes later on in the session as well, or later on in the module. Yeah, how the hell did you write? So somebody was giving out about my taskbar, and I was like, right, I better tidy this up. And the only thing I could see that I could remove was Sea of Thieves, because I've got a link to it anyways, and Inside as well. Yeah, like if you really get to grips with classes within Unreal 4, you'll save yourself a load of time. Like to give you an example, if I go into Blockout here, so these are things that I've scripted myself. They kind of help you block out your level. If I go into Shapes and into Basic Shapes, I think I've got this cube scale. Let me just check. Yeah, so I've got this actor called Cube Scale, okay, or this class called Cube Scale. And basically in this here, it allows me to scale my cube to kind of make walls and floors and stuff like that. They're just really easy to block out certain elements of a level. But then as we move along, I've got this cylinder. 2 seconds, Joe. And if I open that up, no, maybe not the cylinder. Okay, yeah. If I open up this Pyramid 02 scale, so it's a completely different class, but it's actually a child of the cube scale class. So what it's doing is it's pulling a lot of like the mesh and the scene root are inherited from my cube scale. So if I go to my cube scale, you can see I've got this mesh in here, and because my parent pyramid is a child of that, it's pulling through this component of mesh. I've just changed what type of mesh is in it, but it's also pulling through, you know, the type of materials in there. If I had any functionality in here, such as, you know, if a player gets close to it, it might change a different color or something like that, that would also pump through from the parent. So it means that I'm only having to set up one class, and then for any other class or any other object that I want to place in, I'm only having to change the type of mesh that it uses. And then because it's a child of the other one, it's going to change, or it's going to pull through a lot of attributes from it, such as all these all these variables. If I go to my pyramid scale, you can see they're not here because they're already being inherited from the cube scale. So for instance, metallic inside, I can actually get that, okay, within this child blueprint. You mightn't see it over here, but it is contained in this child blueprint because the parent contains it. So everything that this has, the child pulls through, I can just expand on it or customize it if I wish to. Joe, did you have a question? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, so you'll probably cover this next semester in asset creation for games. But if I go to my mesh, you can see the pivot for the mesh is down in this corner and not from the center of the mesh. And the way I got that to work is whenever you're exporting out from a program like Maya, the pivot point isn't taken from wherever the pivot point of the object is in Maya. So you might have the pivot point down there in Maya. The pivot point is actually taken from the center of the scene. So if you align your object to the center of the scene, like I did in Maya, so this is the way I would have had it in Maya, it takes a pivot point from there. So that's how I got it from there. There's very little you can do inside Unreal to change that. So make sure that you do it inside something like Maya. So yeah, the reason I changed the pivot point to there is because if I'm scaling this, it scales from one side and it's not doing it from the middle, which makes it really hard to kind of connect things together. Okay, so let's just make sure I've covered everything. Parent-child inheritance, execution flow. I think that's it for this session. It's a very basic introductory session into Unreal 4. So, well, it's just to look at the layout, Carl, and you know how to create a blueprint. I'll cover that again very quickly. You just make sure you've got your grid on here, and that will make sure that it follows the grid, sorry. And then you also have this snap to surfaces. So if you've got something on the surface, your object should automatically snap to it. So just to kind of cover again how to create a blueprint within Unreal, just to recap. We will be recapping on certain things, Adam, but I'll also have all these tutorials online, so in video form, so you'll be able to kind of watch over them as well. So just to kind of go over again how to create a blueprint within Unreal. So if you right click in the content browser area, you can create a blueprint class. Remember, whatever class you choose from here, it's going to inherit values from that. So for instance, I'll create a character class for now, and I'll just call this Brian Player. Okay, there we go. And if I double click on that, you can see because it's a parent class of character, so my class is Brian Player, but it's a child class of character. It's actually inheriting a lot of features here. So it's inheriting this capsule component, it's inheriting an arrow component, a mesh component. It just doesn't have a mesh in there because I don't think there is one in this project. I might be wrong. Oh, there is. There we go. And it's also inheriting this character movement component as well, which covers a lot of attributes such as gravity scale, walk speed, run speed, jump, a lot of aspects of moving your character around. And then there is no functionality though, so I wouldn't be able to move this character. I haven't set up any input nodes or anything like that. Yeah, he is damn buff. He's got no material on him either, so I wonder what happened there. But you can see now that I'd be able to place this character in my scene, even though he's not positioned correctly. And if I wanted to, maybe this is my base player class, I could right click and create a child off that there, and I could have different variations of my main player, but it would carry across all that functionality for me. So this week I want you to, obviously you're going to be in tomorrow, so we're going to get a chance to use Unreal. I'll be able to troubleshoot with you. It's really important that you try and make this first session, because getting acclimatized to using Unreal sometimes is a bit hard. And it's really nice to have somebody there to kind of just come over and go, yeah, it's just this here, and kind of explain a bit. It's something that you would never get if you're just following YouTube videos, okay? Just somebody to kind of sit with you and go, why is this not working? And then within 2 seconds it is. But for this week, okay, and tomorrow's session, I kind of want you to start on task 1, okay? So in this task, you're to create a light which only turns on when you begin play. As I did, you can add in a slight delay to see a better effect. And you are required to do this as a level blueprint and a class blueprint, okay? So you have to try both. And never use level blueprints afterwards. It's just gaining an understanding of what is class blueprints, what's level blueprints, and why class is superior. For an extra challenge, I want you to research, and this is important, research and find a way of turning the light on by using a light switch, or by adding a dimming effect to the light, okay? So that's what I want you to concentrate on this week when you're using Unreal 4. I have no idea what the lockdown restrictions are. I've been kind of working all day. (10 a.m. Is the first session tomorrow is at 9:30. The second session is at 11:30, and the last session, I believe, is at 2 o'clock, because I get a half an hour break. So if you're in Group A, you're starting at 9:30. If you're Group B, you start at 11:30. If you're Group C, you start at 2 o'clock. These times will more than likely change next week. So next week we might have Group A at 10 a.m., Group B at 12 p.m. and Group C at 2:30. If you don't have your student ID, it's okay. The campus is fully open. The university understands that not everybody's gotten their ID yet. Just make sure that you follow all strict social distancing procedures. So I think there's only one person allowed in the lift, so you'll have to take the stairs. Make sure that you use the gel when you come in and out of the building, that you wash your hands regularly throughout the day, and you only sit in one computer, okay? So whatever computer that you sit in tomorrow, I'd like you to use that computer for the rest of the semester. And also, if you have, and I asked this last Monday, to take in your own keyboard and mouse, please.